Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you for joining us today in another session offered by AACE International. We do a series of these promotional presentations and provide some intel to the membership as well as anybody else who wants to join in. So thank you for this. My name is Lance Stevenson. I'm the Director of Operations for AECOM. I'm also on the technical board for AAC, where I'm the Director of Product Integration. And today we're going to be talking with Deltek on optimizing subcontractor schedule integration with Denise Russell. Denise is a Senior Solutions Architect with Deltek. In regards to the presentation, we asked that you guys use the Q&A tab within the presentation itself, and then ask these questions. And then what we'll do is we'll collect and ask them at the end of the session. That way we can allow Denise an opportunity to go through a presentation. In some regards, maybe your questions will be answered as time prevails. So thank you for that. You guys can introduce yourself to other people in the chat, or just have some conversations if you like as well. And then what we'll do is just continue to move forward, and we should be done by the top of the hour. And from there, we'll just sign off as well. So thank you again. And Denise, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you. As Lance mentioned, I'm Denise Russell. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect here at Deltek in the area of project and portfolio management. And today we're going to talk about how you can optimize the integration of your subcontractor schedules into your integrated master schedule. Before I came here to Deltek about 4 years ago, I spent about 20 years working across various industries, doing project scheduling, project controls, even some project management. Over the course of that 20 years, I received a lot of schedules from subcontractors, partners, customers, pretty much every combination. Some of them were good and some of them were not so great, and they completely blew up my own integrated master schedule. So being able to validate that data prior to integrating it into your schedule saves a lot of time, it saves a lot of effort, and just a lot of rework. If you can do those things, then you can free up your scheduling resources to pretty much do the work that you hired them for, which was to manage and analyze your schedule. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, is just trying to optimize that process so that those schedulers can get back to doing the analysis, managing the schedule, and giving you actionable information. So as we jump into this, I want to step back a little bit and just talk about what we mean by subcontractor schedules. For purposes of this discussion, when I say subcontractor schedules, it's really any schedule that you're getting from an internal source, external source. They can be partners, as I mentioned, vendors. They might be departments within your own division or your organization if you're working on a program. The schedule that you receive from any of those could be varying levels. So you might have an entire project that you're going to incorporate into an overarching program. It might be a large scope of work that you've subcontracted out or partnered up with on somebody else to do, and that you need to then bring that information back in to align with your project deliverables. And I've even seen where it can be very small but very important component, where if you receive that tiny little piece late, your entire schedule's at risk. So you want to be able to have that detail and the relationships to reflect that criticality reflected in your IMS. To make matters even more complicated, the schedules might be utilizing different types of scheduling methodology. They might have been created using different scheduling tools. Kind of what I have up here on the screen is definitely a situation that I have been in, where you might be getting files in various formats. Having worked in different industries, no two project schedules are exactly alike. The commonalities that you see between IT schedules, it's not going to be the same as the commonalities between a construction schedule or manufacturing schedule. If your schedule has to conform to earned value, then it's going to look probably a little bit different than a schedule that doesn't. And something I've been seeing a lot lately is agile schedules, which are very, very different from your typical critical path method or waterfall-based schedule. And again, like I mentioned, you might have somebody using Microsoft Project, you might have somebody using a various form of Primavera, since there are several. And maybe you're using OpenPlan and another one of your partners is using OpenPlan. So you really want to be able to get all of the data combined, and you may not be able to dictate what tools somebody else is using. So you have to have that level of flexibility. At the end of the day, this is what we want our integrated master schedule to look like. We want to be able to take all of the schedule data from all those various sources and create a cohesive integrated master schedule. Even more importantly, we want to be able to do that in the most efficient and effective manner. And in theory, that sounds like it shouldn't be that difficult, but if you've ever had to do that in practice, it can be very complex. It can be very time consuming. And so for today, I want to be able to talk about what are some of the best practices for performing those integrations and ways that you can optimize the process, while at the same time increasing the quality of scheduled deliverables, because it's not just getting the data in, but it's also getting quality data in. If you're able to increase the optimization and decrease the complexity, then again, that's going to give your schedulers more time to spend managing the project instead of just basically managing data entry. As I mentioned previously, when we're dealing with programs or large projects, they're often collaborative efforts. You aren't just managing your schedule. You also have to take into consideration schedules from those subcontractors and partners and vendors potentially. If you're managing programs, then you might have separate schedules for each of the projects within a program. And again, those can come from external sources, internal sources within your own organization, and often a combination of the two. When you're working with those external organizations, again, you may not be able to control what they're using. So you have to be able to both create and manage the integrated master schedule with potentially getting multiple files from multiple sources, and often again in multiple formats. And that is where Acumen Touchstone and OpenPlan, which are two of the tools in the Deltek PPM suite, can really help you streamline that process. And that's going to be pretty much the basis of what I will be demonstrating today. Utilizing Acumen Touchstone and OpenPlan, like I said, it streamlines the process of receiving and importing schedules from a variety of tools. Once you have all of your data collected and input into OpenPlan as part of an integrated master schedule, then you have the ability to link projects together via schedule logic. You can run critical and driving path analyses at any level, whether it's the project or the program. And you're also able to perform other analysis, again, at multiple levels of the integrated master schedule, including resource analysis and management, and even schedule risk analysis. So for today, what we're going to talk about, I am going to spend a few minutes talking about how Acumen Touchstone and OpenPlan fit into the PPM suite here at Deltek, and what other tools outside of Deltek that they're going to integrate with. And I'm also going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the tools themselves and their functionality that can help in this area. And then lastly, hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So the Deltek project and portfolio management suites are distinct and individual tools that provide specific functionality for different actions that you have to complete potentially within a program. It is not meant to have one tool do everything because not everybody needs everything. So it is very purpose driven. The two that I have highlighted here on the screen are what we're going to be discussing today, which is OpenPlan, which is our scheduling tool, and Acumen Touchstone, which is a new tool that we have. There are different tools for cost management, historical analytics, workflows, and dashboarding, and then the Acumen suite, which a lot of folks on this call may be familiar with, which looks at schedule health and schedule risk analysis. OpenPlan has out-of-the-box integrations with P6 and Microsoft Project, which will be the basis of the integrations that we're looking at today, is really how you can gather different files in different tools together. And then again, Acumen Touchstone is also integrates out of the box with P6 and with Microsoft Project as well. So at a high level, Acumen Touchstone automates the receipt and the analysis of schedules from other sources. It can be an internal source or it can be an external source. Automating the process of receipt and analysis is going to help you save time. And it's going to save a lot of effort then that can be turned around and used for more value-added work. Acumen Touchstone is a relatively new addition to the Deltek PPM suite. Unfortunately, it debuted about a month before COVID hit. And so we're kind of relaunching it this year now that everybody's starting to get back to normal. And it streamlines the process of receiving and analyzing the schedule inputs that you're getting from all those different locations. Again, some of you might be familiar with either Acumen Fuse or Acumen Risk or Acumen 360, and Touchstone is in that family of tools, but it is a separate tool. It has the schedule quality analysis functionality that you might be familiar with in Acumen Fuse, and that is the basis for the quality checks that Touchstone does on a schedule when it is submitted. OpenPlan is, again, our scheduling tool. It is a robust scheduling tool, and it integrates bidirectionally with, as I mentioned, P6 as well as Microsoft Project. Using OpenPlan as the basis for an integrated master schedule removes that requirement that everybody has to have the same scheduling tool, because you can import data from other scheduling tools. Being able to do that will enable you to have a true integrated master schedule. In addition to bringing in the schedules of other partners or subcontractors, you can include your own activities that you might have on the program or project, and as well as your own wraparound milestones. And when you do all that, then you can really truly link everything together so that you can run an actual critical path to the end of your program, and it is going to be incorporating your work as well as everybody else's work. You can run a basic Monte Carlo schedule risk analysis, and again, it's going to be looking at everybody's work, not just yours. All of these functions can be performed at any level. So if you want to just perform those on that subcontractor schedule, you can, or again, you can do it at the top level program milestones. At a functional schedule management level, OpenPlan provides the ability to plan and manage any size project schedule. It is built to be intuitive so that you can quickly take the actions that you need to take, do the analysis that you want to do. It does have some unique features, including being able to define user validations. So you can establish rules to help train folks in proper ways to do scheduling. You can have multi-level resource management, so not just looking at the resources at a project level or a component level, but looking at the resources over an entire portfolio of projects if you would like. And you can have multiple people working in the file at the same time, which can come in handy when you have really large programs where you might have, you know, half a dozen schedulers working on the same project.
What does
Since,
wraparound, sorry,
I'm
Denise,
sorry.
what does wraparound mean?
So I would be talking like about like tier 0, tier 1 milestones. So just as an example, I might be on a program where there are 6, 7 major deliverables. Each of those major deliverables might have its own project essentially. And so with the tier 0 and tier 1 milestones, then those are the milestones that are going to encompass the entire program.
Thank you.
Since Touchstone is pretty new, I did want to just spend a couple minutes discussing how it works before I jump into it. With Touchstone, schedules are submitted through a portal. There are delivery deadlines and parameters that you establish as the owner of the schedules that you're receiving. And then upon submittal, those schedules are going to be automatically evaluated using metrics that you've identified in advance, like the 14-point assessment. The schedule file is scored, and based upon that score, it is going to be rejected or accepted. You can also establish additional rules that would result in an automatic rejection. One of the more common ones for that would be if somebody doesn't have a current status date on their file, then it would automatically be rejected. Or if you are using the 14-point assessment as your acceptance criteria, maybe if they have 50% missed logic, then they're automatically going to be rejected. So you can have an auto reject functionality. Once the schedule is received, whether it is accepted or rejected, it is stored for archival purposes. And that also allows you to monitor the adherence to the best practices and standards over the life of the project or program, because you can kind of see, you know, they've submitted this 20 times now. Do we continue to have quality issues every single time? Or are they starting to get the hang of scheduling and are starting to really produce some quality results? Once the schedule has been accepted by Acumen, then you can actually just download that file. And again, it can be P6, Microsoft Project, Acumen Plan. You can download that file and then incorporate that into your integrated master schedule. And that's the process that we'll actually be looking at today. There are 2 roles within Touchstone, and it's just the submitter and the owner, and you're going to be the owner. The submitter is a role that you assign, so that can be assigned to that partner or a vendor, subcontractor, an internal division. And anyone who has the submitter role is the one that's going to be able to submit a schedule through the portal. But now we're going to go ahead and we are going to actually jump in to the tools. So I'm going to pause this presentation for a moment, and we're actually going to jump into Acumen Touchstone. Now, as an owner, when I log into Acumen Touchstone, I'm going to see a lot more than if I'm just a submitter. I'm going to see all of the programs that I have access to. And that can, each of those programs can have any number of projects underneath them. And sometimes it's just a program with a single project. And so you might have a situation like that. If I want to look at what projects are within a program, I'm just going to highlight next to it. And then I can see details on the program level to start with. This is going to be information about my program as a whole, which is going to be all of the projects rolled up. If I click on this projects tab, I'll see the projects that actually make up the program. And these are going to be what folks are submitting deliverables against. Now, if I click on the actual project itself, then I can see what the rules that I have defined and configured are. Again, when I first click on it, I'm going to see that general project information. If I come over to configuration, this is where I'm defining my acceptance criteria. So I'm going to establish what is my battle rhythm kind of for schedule acceptance. Am I doing weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? How long is that upload window going to be? Because I don't want to leave it open all month. If I say that you have 3 days past the end of the reporting period to submit something, then you're going to have 3 days past the reporting period to accept something. The acceptance criteria is also going to be attached here. For this project that we're going to be looking at today, I'm just using the basic 14-point criteria. If I click on that, then I can get detail behind what my requirements are. So in this case, out of my 14 requirements, I can establish what is most important and can actually wait, how the various metrics are being scored. I can also determine that if I want my score to be based upon an average of all the metrics, or if I want to be really, really strict, and if somebody fails any one of these, then I'm automatically rejecting their schedule. Critical path test, in this case, I've determined that if you fail that, I'm not accepting your schedule. So if somebody submitted and they failed that, it will automatically reject. If I come over here to the snapshots tab, I can see everything that has been submitted and what the status of that submission is. The statuses I'm going to see are if it was rejected, if it was received, which means that it's been accepted, and if it is missing. If I actually click on the title of the file, then I'm going to be able to download it. If I hover over the score here and I click on that, then it will actually download the report that the submitter would have received when they submitted it. So in this case, and again, if you've used Acumen Fuse, it's going to look really familiar to you because it is using that same style and that same process. So when somebody submits, they're going to get a report along with their exception or their acceptance or their rejection of their schedule. And so they know exactly what they need to fix. And the nice thing about Touchstone is they're going to fix things and then they're going to resubmit. And you don't have to be part of that process at all. You know, currently you get a schedule, you have to analyze to see if it's decent quality before you import it into your integrated master schedule. Then you have to go back and say, you know what, there's too many problems here. I'm going to need you to fix all these things. And then they might be done. And then they have to wait for you to come into work the next day. And so this takes all of that out of the process. They immediately know if it's been accepted or rejected. They immediately know what they need to correct, and they can immediately correct those things and resubmit. And once that acceptance has occurred, then that's when you can pull that information into your integrated master schedule. And so we're going to jump from Touchstone over to Open Plan and see what that could look like. So I've created an integrated master schedule here in Open Plan that aligns with what we were just looking at in Touchstone. So I have my program, and then I have my projects under my program. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up for just a minute. And this is a brand new project. I haven't taken any status on it yet, but we've just received our first month submittals via Touchstone. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to advance my calendar to my status date. And I'm ready to go ahead and pull in all of those schedules that I received into my file. So I'm actually, and I downloaded these before so we could save a little bit of time on that. So I'm going to go ahead and restore some files here. Sorry about the quiet here. So in this situation, what I've done is I've received 2 open plan files. So one might be an internal and one might be a customer that's also, or a vendor that's also using open plan. And then I'm going to pull in a P6 file and a Microsoft project file that I received. I just updated and deleted my settings. So I pulled in a P6 project now, and I'm going to pull in a Microsoft project file real quick. And that one is this one. And now, right now, I'm basically just pulling in my project status. If I wanted to pull in any other information, I could certainly do that as well. For example, I might have additional custom fields that I have in Microsoft Project that I want to pull in. And even with P6, if I have any custom fields, all I have to do is map that. I haven't mapped anything additional over in to here. I'm just pulling in my updated project status. And all this is doing is just saving my settings so that when I do it again next time, then I already know what exact settings that I want to use. So now if I go ahead and go back into my program, I actually have some performance in here. And I'm going to open. My database network. Once I get the information in here, then I have the ability to take a couple of actions. One of those things is I can run a critical path to the end of the program milestone. So if I come over here to my milestones, I have a program completion milestone. I can go ahead and run my driver analysis, which is my critical path, to that milestone. And when I do that, I can see then that this path is running through all of the different projects that I have incorporated into my integrated master schedule. So I have all of that information, and I can see truly if I have a subcontractor that is performing work, I can go back to them and I can say, you know, this is where you are influencing my critical path. And so these activities really need to be the activities that I need you to make sure do not overrun, are not delayed. And if there's anything that I need to do to make sure that those delays don't happen. Additionally, when I bring all of these things together, I also have the ability to run a schedule risk analysis on my entire integrated master schedule as well. And I've already pre-selected, I think I had 2,000 iterations in here, so I'm going to go ahead and run that. And in advance of this session, what I did is I went ahead and I went into my project and I established for my project the best case, worst case, and most likely duration for the activities in my schedule. Now, I can do this from a standpoint of either, I have gone in and I have done those. I can use a global edit and say, my best case is going to be 90% of what my actual current duration is going to be. I can also have the subcontractors submit that information to me when they send me their schedule. So when I run that risk analysis and what I've done now is this currently is set on the end of my program completion. If I have interim milestones along the way, I can also flag those and look at those. So it is I would call it a basic Monte Carlo. It is duration only. It is not a replacement for those of you who are using Acumen Risk. Acumen Risk is going to incorporate your risk register. It's going to incorporate your mitigations. This is strictly going to be duration based. I can also look at a tornado chart and see what activities within my program are going to be the most risky activities, and can look at that, because then I know that those are potentially the ones that if I do have the ability to mitigate, then those are the ones that I want to focus my mitigation efforts on. And again, I'm doing this at the top level program integrated master schedule level. I can do all of these things on the individual files that I have received from my subcontractors or my vendors or my partners, and do the exact same things on there. If I have them linked into an input milestone in my schedule, I can run a driving path to that milestone and see if what they're telling me is the critical path for their work, to see if that's truly going to be the critical path to meeting up with my milestone. So I have the ability to do this at all levels. So this is pretty much the end of the content that I had for today. Let me switch back here to my slides. I do have to kind of do a little bit of business here. So in terms of the content that I've talked about today, the functionality that I have talked about today, if you have any questions about the functionality, I'm going to put up my email address in just a minute. If you have any questions about the PPM tools themselves, or want a full in-depth demonstration of any of them, although to be honest, that the demonstration of Touchstone, it is purpose driven. It is for accepting your schedules. It is for analyzing your schedules. So that's pretty much the tool, the one that you just saw. But if you wanted to see more about OpenPlan, which there's a lot more than what I went through just today, or any of the other tools, you can contact the general email that I'm going to leave up here in just a moment. If you are already a user of any of Deltek's tools, Project Con is in November in Nashville. You may have known it as Insight. We've been having to go virtual the last few years, but we are back live this year. And so you can register. That is open for registration. And then once a month, we do what we call solution speed sessions, which are 20-minute, just over lunch sessions where we talk about a specific functionality that maybe we're hearing that some people are having trouble with, or that we can solve a problem that we're hearing a lot. We'll have what we call the solution speed sessions. We also have other webinars throughout the year. For September, our solution speed session is actually going to be on agile project scheduling, including importing information from tools like Jira, and talking about agile scheduling as it relates to earned value, because we're really seeing a lot of that lately. So that event is available for registration right now as well. And then if you know, any information about any of our events, whether they're over the web, whether they are in person, can be found at this link right here at the bottom of this slide. And last but not least, again, here's my contact information, my LinkedIn information. If you have any questions about the functionality that we don't get into here today, or if you think of a question tomorrow, feel free to contact me. I'm always happy to help. And then our general Deltek PPM group contact information is also here. And now I'm going to turn things back over to Lance, and we can have a little bit of Q&A maybe.
Yeah, thank you for this. It's intriguing to see how we can bring information together under one house. So many times, I think people who've been working on projects are always trying to shepherd subcontractor information or other schedules into one specific area, and sometimes that doesn't seem to fit. I've been on numerous projects where we've had to come up with some ideas to integrate. This, of course, was 30 years ago, and we've advanced an awful lot since then. Part of the issue, though, that we're dealing with advancement is there's so many tools out there now, too, right? Everybody wants to be a competitor.
Yep.
In regards to scheduling mechanics, are you providing like your subcontractors with recommendations on how you want to see the schedule so you can bring them in a lot more cleaner than what is expected? Like, for instance, identification of activity codes, the use of some of the rules around using the system. Like, for instance, Primavera has a set of rules that you can use. Those kind of things. Do you give them some conditions or understanding of how their projects need to be developed so you can integrate it easier within your system?
I definitely think that you can. I've worked on very large programs where we did establish some of those things in the beginning. We were all going to use a unified numbering structure for our activities, things like that. But then also sometimes for those smaller projects, or where you might not have been engaged with that subcontractor when they started putting their schedule together, then you don't always have the chance to do that. The flexibility in the integration capability between OpenPlan and P6 and Microsoft is really good. So if you have additional data in those tools, or you might be doing something a little bit different, you can map any of those fields over to OpenPlan, as well as if there's any, if for some reason somebody mapped something over and they wanted to make sure that everybody was using the same thing, I can actually export that file back out as a Microsoft project or a P6 file and send that back to the customer for them to use next time. I've definitely done that in the past. And
Okay.
then, so there's a lot of different options that you have in order to make sure that folks are on the same page.
Yeah, one thing is that, like, what I've seen is we've had multiple schedules, for instance, using Primavera at the time, and we allowed them access to our system. That's one thing. Nowadays, you're looking at security restrictions, not allowing people to be in, for instance, the master schedule, but they're allowed to work in theirs. And so sometimes the transfer data, you know, you got a subcontractor uses Microsoft Project or Primavera, they do their stuff, move it over to you. You do your analysis on the overall scheme of the project, because portions of their work might be on the critical path, and you don't really recognize that until you're in the master schedule. And then you got to revert that back over to them and give them. So is for I guess for the person managing the subcontractors, the source of truth would probably be what goes into open plan, but then it's redirected back to them. So if there's changes that need to be done to some of the subcontractor work, you got to move things around. You provide that opportunity by giving it back to them.
You can, certainly.
Yeah. Because one of the questions what was asked here, and let me just, sorry, I'm scrolling down. Is around, almost building, and we've always been accused of this a lot of times, is the planner or scheduler has always been building the schedule in a vacuum, right? They've always never seemed to have their team. So is there a disconnect? Do you feel that there would be a disconnect between what the subcontractor is doing, or even going down to, say, the superintendent or the foreman, and how they're looking at their work at a subcontractor level, and how does that migrate back to the overall plan? Like, how do you engage these type of people to make sure that your subcontractor is doing the right work and it fits into everything? Is there something that you do as well within the tool that helps provide that?
I think that's almost more of a communication issue, perhaps, than a tool issue. I've gotten those deliverables where we get the initial file and we're like, are we building the same thing here? And that's where communication really comes into play, and doing that scope review to make sure that all of the scope that you think is supposed to be in that file is actually in that file. And if you don't think it is, then having those conversations. So that to me is more of a programmatic discussion than a technical tool discussion.
Yeah, because I was just wondering, is there any flags that you have in the system that demonstrates that the connectivity is, like, for instance, relationships with the activities within different schedules? Like, is that brought in as well, or where is the connectivity of that?
In terms of to see if there's supposed to be a link there and it's not,
Yeah,
or
yeah, those kind of things.
I mean, you would see where there are links. So for example, I could pull everything in, I could pull up a logic diagram and do a wall walk and have a conversation and be like, okay, this is where we were expecting to see more links, but we only have one, because I don't know necessarily from their end. Maybe they've got 3 activities representing a scope of work. All I know is I'm supposed to have more stuff feeding into my deliverable than I have, and by looking at the actual logic network diagram, and I can see then where there are those gaps. And I can even flag, when you asked about flags, I can send back a notes field that says, I really think there's supposed to be something else here. Can you help me find it in the schedule? And getting that additional logic added.
Yeah,
so something like that.
Yeah, I've done what I've done to make that more visible for myself and my schedules. I actually added in a milestone, and it was basically a linkage milestone between one schedule to another. And then what I did was I would do a linkage report that allowed me to see where the relationships were from one party versus another party. So there's different ways that you can manage it. I think it comes down to the mechanics of or the user of the system, right? In regards to security, though, what have you seen any issues around security, like with subcontractors maybe not necessarily working in the system? Do you have more provisional rights that give people access to the system, and you can manage their domain per se versus the overall domain?
If they are a submitter, when they log in, all they are going to see literally is their project that they have access to submit to. They will not see other people's submissions. They're going to see their link that then they can submit an activity to. That's it. So it's the submitter relationship versus the owner is very distinct. I was logged in as an owner, so I saw everything. A submitter is really just going to see submittals, and then anything that that they have access to submit.
Okay. Now, when you gave us the roadmap at the beginning of the presentation, you demonstrated some of the other tools that could come into play. Does Acumen also plug and play with other systems out there? Like one question here was, does it accept Astro Power Pro? You know,
So-
just is there other software that it can connect to?
So today for Touchstone, it is just kind of what I call the big three there: the OpenPlan Cobra, OpenPlan P6 and Microsoft Project. Acumen Fuse, that has the ability to import from Astra.
Okay, I see that. And other people were asking if there's a trial version of Acumen Touchstone, right? I think people are intrigued by what it has to offer. So I'm assuming that the connecting with you can provide them with more information about using the tool, or if there's demo packages or things like that.
Yeah, because to be honest, I've never asked that question because I'm usually on the functional side. But so yeah, we'll absolutely add that to the questions that I take back from here and see what they have in that realm.
Okay, well, that's good. Couple of technical questions that we have. Is the auto reject feature based on name criteria within Touchstone? And is that a new addition? There's that one question. And the other one is, when we're analyzing, accepting, or rejecting a contractor schedule, can we simply run the contractor spindle through Fuse prior to importing it into the IMS in P6? Is there opportunities for that?
So to answer the first question on the auto reject, I don't know if that's new per se, but you can have it auto reject on a few different factors. If you have, I showed the 14-point metric is the one that we were scoring to. If you have another metric that is very important to you, that somebody fails, you could auto reject on that metric as well. And then you have the ability to auto reject if the status state is not correct. So there's definitely a lot of room for configuration there. For the second question of, can I run it in Fuse? Absolutely. The difference again, though, is the kind of streamline and automation, and plus the fact that Fuse has a whole lot more metrics in it, although you can export metrics packages from Fuse into Touchstone to use for this purpose. But Fuse also has looking at logic and things like that, doing deep dives of logic. And plus with Fuse, again, you kind of are adding on the extra kind of people component, which can slow things down. I have to wait to receive something and run it through Fuse and send that report back and wait and then run it again. So you kind of are adding in that it's much less streamlined.
Yeah, it's value time over elapsed time. You can expedite it as fast as people respond to you, right?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Whereas Touchstone takes it completely out of the equation.
Okay, that's good. In regards to evaluating the critical path, the Acumen Fuse, can you explain maybe how the relationships between the different activities and different projects are defined? Like, is it very similar to Primavera in regards to relationships, how we connect to them and things like that?
With Acumen Fuse?
Within, I believe the question is within Touchstone. It could be Fuse. I think it's within Touchstone.
Okay, well, within Touchstone, it's going to do the critical path test similar to how it's done in Acumen, which is pretty much the standard. You push your milestone out by 600 days, and does the corresponding activity move? If it does, then you pass. If you don't, then you don't pass.
Okay. All right. In regards to other questions, let me just do a quick view. Seems like you've answered a fair amount of them. I guess in regards to other questions, then for people that are interested, they can contact you at any time to ask the questions that maybe have not been answered here, and provide you with maybe, or you could provide them with maybe some deeper knowledge or understanding of how something is specific towards their needs, things like that. I believe there's that opportunity too. And I believe you can go on your website too and look at some of the product demos and things like that as well, right? Here's another question. The plan schedule is built in a vacuum, right? And we talked about this earlier. And we talked about supporting direct communication. So is there any type of reporting that people can look at, to download, to investigate, to dig deeper in regards to how they can refine their schedule to make it better used within the overall project?
So there's kind of two components to that. One sort of being the scope, is all of the scope represented, and then the other one is this a technically sound or technically high quality schedule? And so those are kind of two different things, and that's why when I mentioned a couple times internal usage of Touchstone, so that is actually one way. If not everybody has Fuse licenses, you can have folks submit through Touchstone to analyze the 14-point assessment on their schedule. In terms of the sort of, is all of my scope represented in the schedule? That would be, again, you have a couple options there. One, doing the basic throw it up on a wall type thing is, do I see all my scope represented? We would always have user defined fields that would have an ID that aligned to the statement of work, so that then we could go back and make it through and make sure that every single line item in the statement of work was tied to at least one activity in the schedule. And that helped us make sure that we had all of our scope represented in the schedule. If we were seeing whole, statement of work paragraphs that had no activities in the schedule, then that was a red flag.
Yeah, no, I understand that. It's part of it comes down to the relationship we have with our subcontractors, well, our contractors, and how they work together, right? I've been on some projects where the subcontractor actually was somewhat inferior in regards to our scheduling needs and didn't want to achieve that. And of course, we ended up doing the contract for the subcontractor, right? But we do give them access so they can look at it and things like that. But again, the communication that we talk about needs to be put in place. The other thing is maybe pre-qualifying our subcontractors a little bit better, that they could demonstrate a maturity to manage a scheduler, or manage a schedule. I'm sure you've experienced this as well, where you go on site and they're great at executing work, but they're not great at planning.
Yep, I've had to fly to many subcontractors and say, okay, guys, we're going to learn how to schedule now, because it's so exhausting to have to get that schedule every week and be like, what's happening here? And so sometimes you do have to just kind of take the bull by the horns and just be like, we're going to do this, guys. Let's get everybody on the same page here.
Yeah. Now, one thing I liked about the feature here, I've written a fair amount of papers on portfolio management through AACE. I got a series of them. And one thing I'm always intrigued about is how people handle portfolio management. And the nice thing about the tool, what I've seen in there in regards to this, is that you're able to have a bunch of projects in there and assign them to a program or a portfolio. Are you really able to, a couple of things, how do you bring the goals of the portfolio together so that every project and therefore every subcontractor is marching towards the same goals? So how is that projected or communicated? That's one aspect. And then also, in regards to portfolio, you might have a subcontractor working on multiple projects. Are you able to find out through this tool whether or not they are in trouble because they can't manage multiple sites? They can't manage the workload. You're starting to see delays and everything because of a lot of maybe there's other reasons.
If they, I mean, if they are providing resources, and they do not have to be costed resources, but if they are providing resources, then potentially you could look at how their resources are stacking up over those multiple projects, and might be able to see things that way. But if they also have those resources on other projects, then you wouldn't necessarily have those. If it's not in there, it's not in Touchstone, but within Acumen Fuse, especially the forensics capabilities work great for that, because I can see what have they been submitting to me, you know, week to week, month to month, and see how that's been changing over time. And if I see that they keep kicking the can down the road on something, then I'm going to ask them why. Why has this been delayed 6 months in a row? You know, what's behind? I've been called out on that myself. You know, why you keep saying that this is going to start the first of the status period, but you've been saying that for every status period for the last 4 months. You know, what's really going on with this activity? So that's where I would want to use something like the forensics and Acumen Fuse to really deep dive and see what's really looking out of place in the submittals.
Oh, that's good. Like, because one thing I always do is assess subcontractors around capacity and capability, right? Do they have the resources to do the work and the capability? And what I mean by that is, can they do design build? Can they do design bid build? Like, can they partner with you to execute different types of project delivery models and things like that? So that's how I assess my subcontractors. So I completely agree with that in regards to how we can bring them in together, because the tool seems to provide that. The analytics side of it, the forensic side of it is, I think it's great that we have that ability, right? And I think you could probably do a lot of pre-planning, just knowing who your subcontractors are, and help manage your workload just based on that. So that's, I think is a really good feature that you guys offer, right? And so I like that high level look at it. So
yeah, like I said, if folks want a more in-depth look at Open Plan, one of my favorite features is the resource management, because I can have 75 projects in my portfolio and look at how my resources are being allocated across those 75 projects, and immediately see, even 2 years from now, where I'm going to have a resource crunch. And so that's one of my favorite functionalities in there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's what we want, visibility, right? We want awareness around certain situations that might come up. So I think tools, that's the number one thing tools should be doing, is bring in that awareness and visibility, so we can do something about it. So I think that's great.
Actionable data.
Yeah, you betcha. So we're at the top of the hour. I think there's no more, there's a bunch of questions, but we can't get to them. Some of them are individual ones that maybe they can reach out to you specifically. And so, like I said, there's your email address that's presented on the screen. On behalf of AAC, we want to thank you for presenting to us today. I think it's anytime we can reach into not only product owners, but people who have skills that you have, who's been boots to the ground, and been in the same mud that the rest of us. It's great to see that knowledge is transferred from the field, and you're working on it to prepare or provide us with a better solution. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you personally for you taking your time out. And I want to thank everybody who joined in today. I appreciate you taking the time and spending your hour, the last hour, with us to seek to understand a little bit more around the tools that are out there. So greatly appreciated. And I'm going to sign off and thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.